welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast episode 34. My name's Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
And you've been a robot for some
I like doing the voice of a robot.
Makes no sense. Why? For what reason?
Because I like it.
So no reason?
No, absolutely none.
Okay. Whatever, GLaDOS.
It's because...
Do you want a piece of cake?
The cake is a lie.
We're not going to ramble on too much this episode because we've got two interviews.
Yes.
We got I Kill Giants creator, Ben 10 creator, Joe Kelly.
Yes.
And also, Pete's done an interview.
Yes.
With Russel Mark Olsen as well, comic creator.
I'm just going to keep saying yes.
So, yeah, if we ramble on too much, it'll just go on forever, so we won't ramble on too much.
It is the episode that never ends.
But we will ramble. Let's get ready, let's get...
Don't.
We're not going to do any new stuff. But we have been on holiday.
We have. We're like tanned and everything.
Because we went to that hot place called Devon.
It was warm.
It was warm.
It was lovely.
It was hot.
You know, because 7 hours on the M5 is the best way to burn an arm, which is what I did.
Yeah, we just sat on the motorway doing
nothing. Well,
moving
mints.
a meter every now and again.
Just occasionally.
In the heat, thinking, we'll get there early so we can get a nice spot on this campsite.
Yeah, we didn't get a bad spot.
No.
I mean, I got grasshoppers in my hair. It's quite fine.
People like to snore in tents.
Oh my God, the snoring. You wouldn't wear any earplugs, though.
I'm not wearing earplugs. I don't need earplugs.
Well, and therefore I'm the man. And you realise in a week that you didn't need sleep either.
No. Don't need no sleep. Don't need no blow-up beds. Thanks, go outdoors. Deflating.
Even on the kids, that was, when we woke up that morning and it deflated. Oh.
The bed of the soft ground is all we need.
We're too old for that.
Buy from your local store. Grass.
Or grass.
Take a small pebble and ram it where it shouldn't go. That is what sleeping on this campsite's like.
It wasn't that. It was a nice campsite. Now stop it.
It wasn't.
We had fun. We came first.
We came joint first.
I don't.
Which means second.
I ignore the joint.
So go on. Let's talk about this. We had a little quiz. You know, the usual campsite puzzle quiz. It was. I think
it was a puzzle quiz.
And we did really well.
Word puzzles. Yeah.
We came joint first out of 4.
Yes.
And then we had to go up and do a final question. Now I say we.
Yeah.
The person who was answering all the questions was you. You were good at these.
I love logic
you refused to go.
Yeah.
On
well,
stage.
I just thought it'd be a bit embarrassing. I mean,
so
let's be honest, after the fact you've been on the stage.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So you thought, let's throw the person up
who
isn't quite as quick.
No, you weren't quick. I got across the floor and almost to you to tell you the answer for it before anyone had even slapped the
Yeah, but I was looking at you going, what?
Yeah,
what?
well, I think that team that won, they looked at me too and they must have lip read better.
They also had 2 people in that team.
I know, that's why I was trying to get up to you. So, because I thought, well, if they've got 2, I could come up.
So I also fell in love with a chimpanzee.
It's a gorilla.
A gorilla.
Monkey. Well, you didn't fall in love. The gorilla fell in love with you.
That's true. And I was dragged up stage with a ventriloquist using the lip things that stick on your face.
Yeah, to give you the different words.
I was hilarious.
You made me laugh.
Thank you. By saying nothing.
Maybe I should upload it onto YouTube.
Well, upload it where you want. I don't care. It'll just add to my fame.
It's on Twitter.
And Facebook.
Anywhere else that I can put it, it's there.
But yeah, we had a nice time.
We did.
We're back now.
We are.
It's
raining. Funny enough, raining.
We went to Exmouth and visited the comic box, a nice little shop down there.
Yeah, little shop there. They're just trying to start. They've been open a year, haven't they?
They've been open, short time. So check out Comic Box on Facebook.
Yes.
Nice little shop.
Yeah, very friendly, very approachable.
And they'd heard of the Lakes International Comic Art Festival.
Yes! And we tried to get him to move.
Come and sell books up here.
Yes.
It's a lot cold.
Yeah, no, you can't. We can't sell it that way. We can sell the scenery and the people. You can sell
the fact that you've got water here. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of water.
There's no hose pipe bands happening here.
No, we almost. But then it rained a lot.
So, a couple of reviews. Mm-hmm. A quick one, first of all. Mm-hmm. For Gallant and Amos, New book from new publisher Fair Spark Books, who are sort of just starting out. They've been done the Little Heroes anthologies before that, which is obviously to get money for the Little Heroes sets that they're giving out in hospitals, which is superb. So check out fairsparkbooks.co.uk. Gallant and Amos, which you have not actually read, I read briefly on holiday, is
I didn't see it.
Short story. It very much reminds me of the French sort of publications, the comic style, comedic style kids books, Asterix and so forth. That sort of book, and it is a very much aimed for children. Anyone can enjoy. Fun story about a warrior and a dragon walking through the icy wastes.
Oh, lovely!
On an adventure. So it's got that sort of humour. Yeah. You know, a little bit slapstick, not over slapstick, but a little bit slapstick. I mean, on the website, they describe it as issue 1 contains 20 pages, full colour, 2 stories, 1 or 2 jokes. There's more than that. But it contains quite a long story.
Don't undersell yourselves.
And then follow a leader. But I can see these characters are really likeable, and something in this little series could keep going on. If you're going on holiday, kid in the back, grab a copy.
Oh, that's a good idea, yeah.
Get it downloaded or physical copy, get it delivered. Because it's a type of comic I know as a kid I'd have read over and over again. So go and check that out. fairsparkbooks.co.uk. So, the next one, a bit more serious.
Oh, just a tad.
A New Jerusalem.
Yep.
By Benjamin Dickson.
Yep.
Is there some blurb on the back? I didn't check.
Well, I can't move my face, can I, away from the microphone because you moaned.
Do as you're told.
Oh, hang on, I've got to take my glasses off now to read.
Give us a blurb.
1945. The war is over. 11-year-old Ralph lives with his mother, plays in bombed-out buildings, and dreams of the day his father will come home and tell him all about his heroic battles. When his father actually does return, he's far from what Ralph expects. His father is sullen, withdrawn, and refuses to discuss the war at all. As Britain looks to a future fit for heroes, Ralph's father struggles to adjust to civilian life. Susceptible to fits of crying and uncontrollable rages, his behaviour starts to directly impact Ralph and his mother and the community around them. So, it's quite a hard book to read in the sense of the content. It's a tough book,
yeah. It's very relevant, I suppose, to today still.
Oh, yes, definitely.
With the wars that go on every now and again and sending all our guys across to whatever country we're sending them. It's published by New Internationalist, which is part of Myriad. So we know Myriad do quality books. And the first thing that jumped out to me, I think, when we got this was the art. It all feels pencil drawn. There's probably a pen into it, but it feels very much like a lot of effort and time has gone into these detailed little imageries.
It captures a lot of movement, which I found with how it's been drawn. There's a lot of movement continually throughout the page. Yeah,
a lot of panels as well.
Yeah.
On each page.
Yeah, a lot of work has gone into that.
And a lot of silent panels throughout the book as well, just sort of showing the imagery and the thoughts and the time these people are having to sit there just think in some ways about what they're going through.
I think that series of panels at the end when Ralph's walking, and he's just walking, isn't he? He's just walking and walking. I think that's quite a powerful set of images.
So it follows, as I say, the story of the dad coming back from war.
Yeah.
And
impacting their daily life, isn't it? It's just a normal life of the mother and the son. He's not known
his dad, though, as well, has he? He was too young.
He was too young,
when he went out to war.
Yeah.
But he can't remember his dad properly at all, so there's no relationship or bond.
No, all he can remember is his dad kissing him and saying, it'll all be over soon. So that's his last image. Well, it's love, isn't it?
It is.
It's that, but that's the last image he has of his father.
He believes his father, as he would, he's a hero. He's a war hero. He's been out there fighting for his country. And that's really all he knows, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I suppose he's got this imagery in his head of his dad being this Superman. And when he knows his dad's coming back, it's like he's going to be
he's going to look after us. It's going to be great. It's going to be like it was, the feelings he had from before he left.
But, as we know, these things don't happen like that.
Not always, no.
And so his dad comes back with mental issues, obviously, having fought within the war.
Yeah, and doing the things I'm not going to say what he's done, but doing the things he did during the war.
Well, we can imagine what people had to do and so forth. And
I think because, he's done something a lot harder than that, which I think it shows that he would be then capable of doing what he does to Ralph and his mum.
It just follows a story of how their relationship, I say grows, it's not grows, how that relationship really. Affects the family. Also what goes on in Ralph's school life as well, and how it affects him as a person and what he does.
Yeah, because he has like little run-ins with people because he's seen something that happened, and then and then the ongoing bits of like that, and then his best friend Dave, is that right? Mm-hmm. Something happens along there, and he loses his best friend for a little bit, and then then everything's going wrong at home, and you feel for Ralph.
Yeah, and his mum.
Yeah, definitely, and his mum. Yeah, because it's quite powerful panels of how the dad explodes. Mm-hmm. And I found that quite hard to look at. I winced at some of the panels.
Yeah.
As you go through it. I mean, I think you can imagine what those panels are depicting. And I found that very, you were on the side of the mother and Ralph for the whole thing, really.
It really does show what was missing back in those days from a psychological side of things.
Oh yeah, nothing was there left. No, they were expected to come home and get on with it, weren't they?
Life, find a job, which there was no jobs going anyway.
Yeah,
everything they'd known has vanished or changed.
Yeah, their whole lives have changed.
And luckily, it's not perfect now, but it is different now.
Yeah, there's still a way to go,
there, at least.
But also the way that the community then kind of went to the mum, well, you need to stop nagging, you need to stop doing this. And it was more like her fault. You've got to make sure it's all quiet and nice for him, not he shouldn't be doing this. It was, so it was, and even like the vicar and stuff, even though the vicar later on kind of helps out, I found that, it was more like, well, we understand it, but you've got to carry on, what do you expect almost? So I found that,
so it's worth a read. A New Jerusalem by Benjamin Dickson. Go and check it out. I feel it's another one of Myriad's hard. I say hard books. I don't mean it in a way. It's just worth
hard
reading.
Hitting.
Yeah, it's worth reading.
Yeah.
As majority of the stuff are, to be honest. So a couple of interviews.
Yes.
Enjoy, and then we'll come back and discuss some more events at this year's festival.
Mike's Mutterings.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike's Mutterings. I have a bit of a niche genre to explore with you today. Ultra-modern spec ops. There aren't many comic series that fall into this category because it really is quite specific. The term modern warfare is bandied about a lot, but can be very generic and is used by films and books to mean anything really from World War II onwards. But ultra-modern means today, right now, or maybe just into tomorrow. It means current warfare, its methodology, language, tactics and technology. Spec Ops refers to special operations, military jargon for the various elite forces around the world that carry out high-risk or covert operations on behalf of world states. Just 10 years ago, almost nothing was known about the modus operandi of such agencies. But all that changed on May the 1st, 2011, when members of the US SEAL Team 6 infiltrated Osama bin Laden's compound, executed him, and gathered vital military intelligence prior to extraction. Suddenly, the world was now aware of a previous little-known military branch, and saw their lethal covert tactics up close. SEAL Team 6 consisted of elite, decorated soldiers from all different military units who belonged to JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Committee, who were gathered together from their current assignments to perform high-risk, high-reward operations. Such a publicly reported event intensified the public fascination with such groups, and through media, books and film, we saw behind the curtain of a very important part of modern warfare. It's a world of operators, elite-level soldiers with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of training and equipment behind them, veterans of many theatres of war, and owners of an unshakable force of will and determination. These operators and their agencies are known as Tier 1. Ultramodern warfare and special operations stories were first popularised in books. Numerous realistic accounts from operators came out before fiction slowly caught up. Then film and TV took off and a deluge of content was pushed into the public eye. Shows such as The Unit, The Brave, SEAL Team and Strike Back for drama. Then you have series like Special Ops Mission, which is basically a documentary crossed with a reality show. Video games like Call of Duty and Modern Warfare went down the Spec Ops route as well, and it was inevitable really that comics would follow. The game Modern Warfare 2 spawned a 6-issue series called Ghost, based on the titular character, a Task Force 141 soldier with a mysterious past. Then there was Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, Echoes. Maybe a first, it's a graphic novel based on a game, based on a book series. So, with this explosion of content out there, we should now know what a good Spec Ops story should look like. And it really does boil down to realism. Accuracy is paramount, be it in the language that's used, the social politics, or weaponry and technology. Exacting research should be evidenced too. Plot should not only be within the realms of possibility, but feel like it's probably happening somewhere in the world right now. Something that the TV series don't really get right. So here's my recommendations. First off, Black Powder Red Earth. It's a comic series from John Chang, Kane Smith and Josh Taylor. It was independently published through the use of Patreon, and it's actually one of the most professionally done comics I've seen. It tells the story of two operators, Grinch and Token, who are PMCs, or private military contractors. They work for a PMC firm called Cold Harbour, which I think is heavily based on the real-life firm Blackwater, which picked up lots of military contracts in Iraq. Although I found the earlier stories slow to start, it does eventually grab you, and in the end pushes you along nicely. It's slightly more accessible from a language point of view, as they are private operators rather than actually in the military machine. But the accuracy of their situation, both politically and location-wise, is superbly detailed. The collected books include very detailed appendices and design notes that not only inform and explain, but also show off just how crazily detailed their research was. The fact that the most positive online reviews I found are from US veterans really does say a lot. The later Syria and Yemen volumes of work show continued evolution of storytelling and artistry. However, my top recommendation has to be Nathan Edmondson and Mitch Gerard's The Activity. It ran from 2011 to 2014 and consists of 3 collated volumes that follow Team Omaha, part of the ISA, Intelligence Support Activity. This is another important branch of special operations that has only come to light in recent years. The public name of the US ISA changes frequently, but they always remain the backbone of all their special operations, providing the intelligence to conduct key missions across the globe. Nathan's script engages you immediately. It's 100% unapologetic for its use of military linguistics, and assumes that the reader knows their JSOCs and SIGINTs from their dev grooves. This acronym-laden text submerges you rather than confuses you, though. The native languages of the theatre of wars that they go to remain unsubtitled to add to that feeling of alien lands. The action moves rapidly across the world: Italy, Mexico, Afghanistan, Colombia, Thailand. Its episodic nature reads like a TV box set in composition. Each episode seems self-contained. Character and story development is in equal parts, with a small teaser of a wider overarching story at the end. Gerard's character art really complements the developing backstories, and his attention to detail, especially from a technical level in everything from the vehicles, aircraft, weaponry, even the locations, it just adds a sheen of realism to it all. And then digital satellite feeds, database screens and thermal imaging is transposed across pages and in panels. It really draws you in. You're brought into the family lives of the operators, their mission planning sessions, even tech discussions. It also sticks to the golden rule. None of the missions creep into the land of fantasy. Solid global or local politics feel right, and the missions succeed or fail by ever-shifting objectives. It's a fantastic read, and I highly recommend it. It's probably the best example of the genre I could find. A great touch is the handy jargon guide and recommended reading list that they included at the back. Despite its format, there looks to be interest in making this into a film rather than a TV series. The screenwriter of Black Hawk Down adaptation, Ken Nolan, announced a deal with Paramount Pictures back in 2015. There's no further news on this, but I do hope it comes to fruition. If you want to learn more on how operators operate, then I can wholeheartedly recommend the novel Baghdad Operators by James Glass and Andrew Rawson. Again, both the book and the movie of 13 Hours by Mitchell Zuckoff are brilliant. It's a real-life account and quite chilling at times, and both the book and the film are worth it for their different merits. Likewise, there's Zero Dark 30, which tells the story of the manhunt for Osama bin Laden and obviously ends with the compound raid, but both the book and the film are worth it for different reasons. There's numerous books on the use of special forces and PMCs in the Mexican cartel wars, but actually the fictional Sicario films really capture the clandestine nature of Spec Ops and covert missions from various angles, far better than any of the real-life books that I've read. It's a shame that the majority of content is US-centric, and I'd love coverage of the UKSF or United Kingdom Special Forces, our version of JSOC. Anyway, I'm Oscar Mike. Catch you all at the next sequel.
Right, so we have with us today Joe Kelly. I'd list everything he's done, but it's too long to list. So we'll start talking through it as we go along. So Joe, what did you read when you were growing up? What comics were you into in the early days?
Well, my first introduction to comics was sort of like a lot of kids, I think. It was like a box of comics that an uncle gave me that were just sitting in his basement that he didn't care about anymore. And that ran the gamut. But the ones that I was most attracted to were some old Spideys. Spideys and horror books, strangely enough. So I was reading like Witching Hour and House of Secrets and House of Mystery and but then a run of Amazing Spider-Man. And then there was some Superman in there as well that I definitely dug through. And then he had a lot of war comics and stuff, which ironically I didn't really read at that time and wasn't really into. They kind of scared me. I was pretty young. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of my first batch of comics that I read, until I destroyed the paper probably. And then when I got a little bit older, I was in junior high and I was sick and my mother had taken me to the drugstore and I saw Bill Sienkiewicz New Mutants sitting on a spinner rack. And it was, I think it's issue 18. And that was the one that really got me hooked. I've never seen, the comics that I had grown up reading from that initial pile were obviously much more traditional. And I'd never seen anything like that art, that Bill is so exceptional at and well known for. And the story just totally hooked me. I mean, I hadn't read X-Men yet, so the New Mutants really spoke to me in terms of being younger characters, and that's what pulled me in. And then from there, once I sort of became an official comic book nerd, I was pretty much a Marvel zombie for most of my life, and then met a couple of older kids that were like, hey, you need to read Watchmen, and you need to read, this, that, and the other thing. And they expanded my my repertoire a little bit better. So those were my entry points. Pretty mainstream stuff, but really that the Bill Sienkiewicz art was the hook. That was my instant fall in love. Still one of my favorites.
It's quite different because we speak to a lot of British creators, certainly well-established creators who at the time we never got sort of Marvel and DC comics away the American audience obviously got it. So it's nice to hear something different than it's usually battle or something different over here. Very, very basics in comparison to the superhero stuff that you guys obviously had.
Oh, that's so funny. Long. I feel like mine is completely basic American.
No, we get jealous because, I mean, we grew up in the 80s and 90s. We never got hardly any of that stuff over here.
No, it came across in packing, didn't it?
Yeah.
And that's how people got hold of the odd Marvel.
Oh, that's funny.
It's odd where it's a completely different world now, obviously. Thank you, Internet. So what got you into writing then?
I always was interested in writing and drawing, actually, when I was young. I had a few teachers throughout the years that really encouraged me as a writer, kind of even in my, the lower, younger grades, which was great and sort of built a foundation for creativity and thinking differently. And when I went to college, I was an art and theater major, but not at a school that was particularly known for that stuff. And then I discovered beer. And that was probably not the best combination for me at that time. So I wound up with a degree in philosophy because it was the major that would get me out on time. I really didn't want to stay there much longer. And then I went to work in production for a little while as a production assistant. So I was lugging equipment around and driving trucks and doing all that sort of fun stuff on commercial sets. And you learn pretty quickly sort of the ropes, and then you decide to specialize if you want to stay in production. And so I thought, well, if I was going to do that, I would try to get back to my art roots and go with being a prop or visual effects, which were all practical at the time. Or I would take another crack at art, and specifically writing, because I felt like my chops for visual art were really weak. I had sort of let that fall away. So I applied to NYU for a master's in screenwriting and got in. And it was a complete shock, to be honest. They took like 20 students, and we all assumed that we were number 21 and somebody got hit by a bus. So that was, none of us expected to actually get into the program. And that really set me on the path that ultimately led to this bizarre career that I have.
So that led on to working with Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel. Some of the new younger editors at the time, James Felder and Mark Powers, wanted to start a kind of new talent program. And James Felder had gone to NYU, so he reached out to our department. And my department specifically was dramatic writing. So we were being trained to do plays and screenplays and a little bit of television at the time. Now they have a strong focus in TV. And so they wrote this letter to the department head, who was sort of more of your artsy playwright type. And the secretary and I used to talk a lot about comics. She knew I liked comics, and she taught herself how to read based on Superman comics because she would pick them up in the store and wanted to know what Superman was saying while he was beating up bad guys. So one day she says, there's a letter sitting there from Marvel. I think it's going to wind up in the garbage. So maybe you should do something about that. So I kind of stole the letter and read it and saw that they wanted to start this program. And then I sort of graciously mentioned to the program director, oh, hey, I heard Marvel might have contacted you. I know something about comic books. Brilliant. After I put the letter back. And then so then she said, sure, if you want to run it, go for it. And because I was already working in the department. So I helped set up that program. And that got me in the door, meeting these editors. They liked what I was doing with dialogue specifically. They sort of trained us in Marvel style of working, not literal Marvel plotting, but just their take on dialogue and world building and all that sort of stuff. And they were great. And they were really very cool to me. And then offered me that job while I was still in school. And I always tell the stealing letter story, mostly for anybody who's out there that's kind of new or trying to get in, not that they go commit a felony to get into the business, but that sometimes these opportunities come from very unexpected places, and you just have to be willing to put yourself out there, embarrassed or not, and see what happens. And in that particular case, it worked out to my advantage. The second year we ran that program, Brian K. Vaughan came out of it. So we only ran it for 2 years, but we got a couple of good writers out of it, and then the class has since become institutionalized. It's actually still taught now at NYU. So that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. That's superb. It eventually led on to you taking on the Deadpool mantle. Is that 3 years roughly you did that for?
Yeah. I my first gigs at Marvel were like What Ifs and Marvel Fanfare and fill-ins and that sort of stuff. The 2099 books, and then Matt Idelson, who was also a relatively new editor. I worked with him on a couple of things. Got the gig to do Deadpool, and was told, this book is probably going to be canceled in 6 months, but we want you to do it. And he offered me the shot to pitch for it, which was great. And liked that I was sort of skewing more towards comedy and a little less on the nose mercenary for hire stuff, which is what he was getting from other people. And that led to that gig, which was my sort of, I guess technically I'd gotten Daredevil first, following up Carl Kiesel, which I was on for a year. So that was my first kind of ongoing title. But this is the one that, I got to kick off by myself and really build out. And I was on for 33 issues and a bunch of annuals, and roughly 3 years. Like I said, it was a cornerstone of my career and really helped me make a name for myself at Marvel and in comics at large.
We sort of molded him from, I believe, into the character that he is today, sort of bringing out different aspects of the character, certainly from what he was originally. Do you feel that without the work you put in, he would be as popular, I suppose? Is it a valid question to ask?
It's a very valid question. I don't know how to answer without it being a humble brag.
Do it.
No, I'm always very appreciative when people attribute his sort of modern voice to me. That's very kind. And there's certainly stuff that I know I brought to the character, and obviously that many people who followed up my run added their own takes to things that I think all congealed into the glorious mess that's Deadpool. But I'm definitely, there was stuff that I was more interested in, I think, than maybe other writers who had played with the character before. I loved the humor. I loved how broken he was as a person. It was also just a function of, if you're going to do an ongoing series about this guy, there has to be something redeemable about him. And you can't, it would get boring quickly if he was just grim and gritty on missions all the time and happened to have a smart mouth. So really by necessity, we were digging into a more layered character, and we had the chance to explore that and build out a cast that they had only had a few miniseries other than his appearances in X-Force. So they didn't get a ton of time to really explore that character, but they laid the foundation of like the Siren relationship and certainly the insecurity about his own look and his face, which for me fed a lot of character and what he was really like, and where all the smack talk was coming from. And but then it became, well, how do we have a lot of fun and just make this like the most evil sort of Bugs Bunny, type of character in the Marvel universe, but with heart and try to give him that, for me, if there's one thing that I feel like I contributed the most, was just this idea that he was somebody who really wanted to do well, be a good guy, but didn't know how. So inevitably he was going to screw it up at every step. And then on the rare occasion when he did the right thing, the universe would punish him for it. That was kind of my ethos for Deadpool. And then the comedy stuff. There are plenty of people that are super funny and have made Deadpool super funny over time. But I guess I got to explore that side in a little more depth.
Brilliant. You then eventually moved on to DC, Action Comics, you about 5 years, was that right? Writing Superman?
I think it was a little less. I feel like Action was about another 3-year run, maybe with a couple of drop-ins here and there.
Okay.
That was kind of a funny story. I was hired by accident on Superman. Steve Siegel and I both worked on the X-Men books at Marvel, and Steve was on Uncanny, and I was on Adjectiveless X-Men. And when it was Eddie Berganza who hired me, he really liked Steve's run and got them confused. And I didn't find that out until after I was hired. Luckily, Steve eventually came over to work in the Superman books as well, so the universe balanced out. But I found that out after the fact, which was pretty good. Once again, luck intervened.
With a character like Superman, who's had so much written about him and so many stories out there, how do you keep him fresh? Certainly for 3 years as well.
Well, it was one of the good things, I think, that I came to that book not as a huge Superman fan. Mm-hmm. They had asked me right up top, like, what do you know about Superman? What were your favorite Supermans? And I said, well, besides those couple of books that I read in that box of comics from my uncle, the movies, I said, that's really my Superman. I mean, I watched the old show in reruns. I'm not that old, so it was just, they ran them on syndication forever. But it was the movies. And I said, that's kind of what I know. And he said, great. That's what I want. I don't want somebody who's sort of, devotee of Superman's continuity. And I was newly married. I got married in 97, which was the same year I graduated NYU and started writing the X-Men. It all happened like in a 3-week period. Oh, so, it was a good summer.
On the beer.
So as somebody who was, now married for a couple of years, and we just decided to focus on the man of, aspect of Superman and really play Lois and Clark as a young couple, even though in comic time, they had already been married for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that really helped me tap into that character. Also, in the beginning, I was working with Herman Garcia, whose art style was just really fresh and bouncy. For me, I loved working with his art. I mean, I worked with a lot of great artists on Superman, but that, I think, helped give us a voice. Also, we had 4 books at the time, so everyone had a different flavor. So one book was more sci-fi focused, and one was more like Lex and Lex versus Superman focused. We were able to mix it up a little bit. But I really came to love the character. I at first just thought, oh yeah, he's a little hokey, whatever. But what he ultimately represents in this idea of hope, and for me at least, I mean, other people look at him for different. He's a symbol you can really apply your own motivations, politics, etc. to. And but I just really gravitated towards that idea of this undying hope, and this character who was just sort of raised on very simple terms and just saw the best in humanity and tried to lead by example. So that really became important for me during the course of just our little bit of history at that time, mm-hmm. things that were happening in the world and etc. I felt like that beacon was important to keep lit.
Yeah, still is today though. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Man of Action. So,
mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
So, Man of Action is myself, Steve Siegel, Joe Casey, and Duncan Rouleau. Mm-hmm. We all met in the X office at Marvel, sort of in one way or another. The 3 of them live out in LA. I live in New York. And they kind of already knew one another tangentially through mutual friends. But Steve and I met on X-Men and hung out a lot because we were, developing the whole sort of the line at the time. Duncan and I met doing a Juggernaut one-shot, which was really amazing. Just because I had never seen, a style of art like his. I mean, he's much like, not at all like Bill Sienkiewicz, but in the land of somebody who's very expressionistic and really pours a different take onto the page. I fell in love with Duncan's art immediately. so we hit it off really well, and we were phone friends for like years until I finally met him in person. And Joe Casey, like I said, knew the guys, and he came on to work on cable. So we all sort of hit it off, and we would spend times at these big Marvel retreats making stuff up for other people. And then did the same thing over at DC. We all kind of migrated over to DC, and Duncan drew a lot of my Superman run. And we said, we already do this for other people. Why don't we try doing it for ourselves? And just started making things up. And around that time, we had seen how people were treated, comic book creators specifically and writers specifically in Hollywood. So we sort of thought like, if we form a company, we'll be treated better because they'll have to treat us like a company. And it was a good try. It ultimately turned out to be true, but it's turned out to be true after, almost 20 years of a body of work. It wasn't just because we hung out a shingle, but we joked that we went to San Diego and we got a table so we'd have a place to sit. Cause Comic-Con is just so huge and, you get really tired walking around the whole time. So we got a booth, and, as soon as we had a booth, we had people could find us. And then, we had friends over at, what was Wizard Magazine back in the day. Matt Senreich, who's a co-creator of Robot Chicken, was starting to talk to people, at Warner Brothers, and they wanted to meet comic guys who were interested in doing animation. Again, people looking for new blood, which is definitely like a common theme in our collective careers. And so we, the guy, Sam Registers, his name is the exec over at Warner Brothers, and very savvy guy and very Hollywood. And so we were like, all right, we'll give you 20 ideas in 20 minutes. And he said, sounds great. And then we had to make up 20 ideas. We did not have those ideas yet. So we sat around and cooked them up and went in, and literally we had a minute timer. And if somebody babbled on too long, we were like, all right, you're done. We'd shut him up. And if he didn't like it, one of mine was like, all right, it's werewolves that fly jet planes. And he was like, nope, hate werewolf. And that was the end of that.
I like the sounds of that, though.
And one of those became Ben 10. And that was what really ultimately launched us into a position where we could be a company. We had some work before that. We wrote some short films for somebody, and we did an X-Men Legends video game. But that was really the big break.
How does it differ writing for comics and for TV? Is there a difference, or is it quite similar?
The process of creation varies a little bit, but mostly it's the same stuff. You're sort of what are the big themes we're trying to explore, and what's the specific DNA of this character or this genre. That all still is basic. The writing tools that we're all accustomed to. The actual script writing is different for a comic where time is not a factor, versus animation or live action where time matters, and that page a minute approximate guide is industry standard. So you actually can develop a lot of bad habits writing for comics because you can describe whatever you want. You can describe every noodly bit of the finials in a room or how many people are in a crowd scene or whatever, and write a 40-page script for a 22-page comic. And then you get to animation and you need to figure out how to write 12 pages for an 11-minute script. So it was good. But like I said, my training was in screenwriting. So right. I was always a visual writer, and that's across the board key. No matter what, you have to be able to convey the images that you're hoping to see, whether it's on screen or on the page. It's really that sense of timing, and then how do you keep that across the page writing punchy? And it's a lot easier to do when you're doing a comic script. You have a relationship with your artist. I'm usually writing directly to somebody, so you can make the jokes. You can do whatever you need to do to get them motivated to draw the way you need them to draw. But a script for animation or for film is going to be read by 100 different people, and animation specifically is going to be broken up and handed out to storyboard teams. So the writing still needs to be bouncy, but it's clarity is your most important element. So it was a big learning curve for everybody, but it's been great. I mean, I feel like we're all very comfortable moving from one medium to another at this point, which is a nice set of tools to have in the kit.
Yeah, which obviously you did with I Kill Giants, which we'll talk about the movie in a moment. The book itself, which we absolutely adore in this house. Absolutely adore it. Ken's art is it's just so different and so fresh when you open the pages and you see his beautiful artwork in there. How did you meet him and get him involved with the story?
I was so lucky to meet Ken. I had the script for I Kill Giants sitting around for quite a while. I had a few friends that were interested and then couldn't do it for one reason or another over the course of time. And I met Ken at a convention in Spain, in Bilbao, and we were set at a table together. One of the things that I love about European conventions is that you get to meet such a wide range of talent and people who are not heavily influenced by the American market, which is really cool. So they're pulling from all sorts of different source material, and their influences are just way different than what I'm used to. And then you also there's no well, at least in my experience, I haven't had that sort of like class striation that you get kind of at American cons where it's like, well, here's the super established people and we keep you over here, and here's the new people and you're kept over there. So you just meet who you meet. You're all going out to lunch. You're all hanging out at panels, etc. I love that about because they're more like art festivals, like they're not for people to sell T-shirts generally. So Ken and I were set at a table together, and I didn't know it at the time. He was still in school, and he had just self-published a book of short stories, which was stuff of his from work. And it was really diverse. I saw he had a lot of different styles, all interesting, really one stronger than the next. So we got to talking, and he seemed like a guy with his head on his shoulders. So I said, well, if you're interested and you want to do something, let me know. And then I followed it up with him afterwards. And Ken, to his credit, much in my my letter theft story, he just kept it quiet. He was still in school. And saw an opportunity to work with somebody who was established. I didn't know that he was a fan of steampunk. He told me later. And so he said yes. And we started the process of developing Giants together, which took a long time because I didn't know he was still in school. But he's a meticulous designer. He's actually, you wouldn't know it by looking at his line work seems so loose and effortless, but it's because he puts in so much time developing that look and developing the style, and he knows the characters inside and out to the point where he can draw them with like 4 lines and they look amazing. So he did a lot of work on developing the look of Giants, and specifically Barbara. And, she was kind of loosely based on a more fantastic version of my own daughter, older and sassier and et cetera. And my daughter at the time had a lot of curly hair, and we thought we were going to do maybe color, weren't totally sure. So she was going to have a lot of like red hair, and she would have looked like Merida from Brave, I think, if we'd done it. That was sort of the goal, was that kind of thing. And Ken was like, well, I think we have to do this book in black and white for me to actually get it done. And I'm going to draw in kind of a manga style to keep it simple so I can finish. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. It's not what I expected, but it sounds great. And he said, I can't draw the curly hair. Every time I do it, it looks like just I dumped spaghetti on her hair. So how about I give you some other ideas? And one of them was the bunny ears, the look that's become so iconic for her. Yeah. And he just said, the kids that I know that are kind of involved in D&D or anime or any of this stuff, like they wear this stuff. So how about what if she had kind of a collection of hats and wore the cat ears sometimes and the bunny ears sometimes? And I was sold immediately. So Ken was for somebody who was brand new, a very, very generous collaborator and somebody I could trust immediately. So he was super pro right out of the gate. I'm so lucky to have gotten to have met him. He's really a special guy, and he's like a super genius. He speaks like 4 languages, and he's a world traveler. He's a really very, very great guy, good friend.
Well, we love the book, the art, the story, the whole lot. Mm-hmm. The film, yes, we both cried over. Let's be honest. I cried. You cried.
We all cried.
I did too. So same book.
How was it transferring that story to a script? Because you watch the film and there's a lot more of the monsters in the film, which when you read the comic is quite surprising. You think it'd be the other way around, trying to thin down the script. How was it creating that story into a movie?
I was really lucky in terms of the experience. People were from second one, all the producers who came on board and believed in the story understood that I had actually written a script already for it. I loved the story so much that as soon as I finished the comic script, I wrote an adaptation that was a pretty strict adaptation of the comic for screenplay. So people were able to see that I could write, which was helpful. And then in the process of developing it, both with Chris Columbus and then with Anders Walter, who directed the film, the biggest thing that we were trying to do is not break the movie. And by that, I mean, Barbara's, and I think this happens in the book, but comics are more forgiving. It's important to me that you can read that book and decide what's happening is happening just in her mind, or the universe is kind of cracked open and given her a gift, and it's kind of a magical realism thing. I like the audience to be able to, or the reader to be able to make that decision for themselves. So to keep that tension going in the movie, we realize that certain things, if you show them, the audience immediately drops out, or they immediately go, oh, that's fantasy. They're not going to think it's real. And that became the biggest challenge. So Anders was especially good at picking out scenes like there's a scene in the book where after she's hit Miss Mollet, she walks through the rest of her day in a daze, and this body armor builds up, the suit of armor. And then Taylor comes in and punches it off of her. And he said, I love that scene, and visually it would be amazing. But if we do it and we don't comment on it, it's in her head, period. Like if somebody doesn't say, why are you wearing a suit of armor? Then it is clearly in her mind, as opposed to, oh, that could have been real and nobody saw it. And so a lot of that stuff that we took out then kind of became replaced by the other creatures in the film, because we needed to still have a way to reflect her interior life in an exterior fashion. So it wasn't just her running around looking angsty, that she had stuff to do. So I'm really happy. I mean, I love the film. I'm really happy with how it came out. And I like that they're nice. I feel like they're strong companion pieces to one another. You're not getting the same experience twice if you read the book and watch the film.
No, definitely. If you've not seen it, go and see it. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Obviously read the comic book, but yeah, go and see the film as well. It's really enjoyable. Mike, one of our collaborators on a podcast, asked a question. Do you think there could be a sequel? Do you think she's got any more demons to battle?
I toyed with the idea for a while and had sort of started writing something down that was really, really grim. It was so grim. And I just decided, you know what, this one's good on its own. I think Barbara, I don't know what happens to her life after this point. And I'd love to see her pop up in another, Joe and Ken book somewhere along the line, because I do like the idea of sort of connected, universe with the books that Ken and I do. We are doing a new book finally, but yeah, I think Barbara's story is that's the story, because I mean, I'm telling you, it was dark, and I was like,
you just want to have a happy life, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to go on and be happy. So it was pretty rough, and I thought, I'll save that for somebody else. Just because I think it also, I felt like the themes were so strong and they were so personal for what was happening in my own life at that time, that it felt like to do another story with those characters specifically would be it almost had to stay in that realm. And then if you were dealing with the same themes, you could only go darker. There was not a lot else to do for me with that character. So I think if Barbara was to show up in something else, it would be more as a supporting player, or somebody who's been through something and could maybe provide some insight for somebody else. But yeah, no sequel, for that one.
You actually working at the minute, or you have been working with Ken on the Traces of a Great War anthology. Yes. How was that, writing a short story based around the World War I?
I love short stories. I mean, I've always enjoyed doing them. It's fun to try to get the espresso version of a concept and can you nail it? Can you make somebody feel something in a very short period of time? So, and with Ken, who's so good at, again, with so few lines can convey so much. I knew that we would be able to tell a story that, accomplished what we wanted to do. And I pitched him a couple of ideas, and we both kind of glommed onto this idea. I'm not a historian, and certainly not an expert at all on World War I. Mm-hmm. But the idea of, the big universal themes of war and this project specifically about like the echoes, like what are you seeing, 100 years later, was really fascinating to me and kind of triggered that idea of, this old saying of, if you save one life, you save a million, because the choices, those little microscopic choices and the tiny coincidences and actions and things that happen on a battlefield that can have repercussions you would never think of, really struck me as an interesting way to approach that theme. So, and Ken was into that. So that kind of formed the spine of the story. And then, I love that, I call it a poem, but I don't know if it's really fair to call it a poem, but the For Want of a Nail, which people have heard in many different versions, which is, the sort of negative version of this idea that, a little bit of sloppiness up front, because you didn't put the right nail in the horse's horseshoe leads to the collapse of an army. That seemed like a really great narrative tool, because I think of that as specifically English. I don't know. I mean, when I was doing research on that poem, there seemed to be some debate as to where it actually came from. But my introduction to it was of course through comics, and Alan Davis using it in the nail for the JLA. So I was like, oh, it must be British. So I'll use it. But doing it in the other way, it's, because something doesn't happen. So the idea that this one guy chooses not to kill somebody leads to 100 years long story that brings us up to the present.
I'm excited. Because we keep talking to creators about the work they're doing. It's just so interesting. It just seems like another side creators can let out the story ideas. It's really exciting.
I know for me, it's, like I said, war stories are generally not my thing, but I remember, one of a big eye opener for me was, these books came out a long time ago, but I don't know if you read Garth Ennis's, war stories.
No.
No, that series. So I'd only known Garth from Preacher. Mm-hmm. And, so that Preacher is my kind of stuff. Like, I mean, dark,
Twisted. Yeah.
Twisted. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. And then, I found out that he was really into sort of, not war for the sake of, just the battles and the horror of it, but as a historian, something he was a fan of. So when these war stories, they started publishing them through Vertigo, I was like, oh, sure, I'll check them out. And I was so moved by the types of stories that he was telling. I mean, it was really, I got to see a different side of him, as a writer. So yeah, the overall framework of that, of the genre and just plunging yourself into that mindset. I know a few people who've been overseas. My brother was a Marine, even though he was never in active duty, but at a time where he could have easily been sent into, some pretty crummy scenarios. Sort of tail end of Vietnam, and my brother-in-law is a Vietnam veteran. So it's in my life peripherally, and it makes you think about a lot of things, I think, and especially, like you said before, in today's climate and the things that we're dealing with and looking at, you kind of can't help but lose yourself in the bigger questions that war and war stories evoke. So it's been, it was a really, for a tiny story, for a little 5-page story, it stirred up a lot for myself, and I think for Ken as well. So I'm excited to see what everybody else has done for this project. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Not long now.
Yeah.
With the festival this year, one of the things they're looking at in one of the panels is their favourite comic book movie. So, which is yours? I Kill Giants is not allowed.
I was thinking about this a lot, and there are many, many good ones, and I'm sure there's a few that that if you said to me afterwards, oh, what about this? What about this? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, that's a really great movie. But the one that I love so much, and I love it. I will admit that I saw the movie before I actually read the book, but it's Scott Pilgrim. Yes. I love Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I love that movie so much, and watched it easily 24 times. I mean, I can't tell every time it was on, and watch it with my kids, and just everything, because I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan, so that just was a perfect intersection of kind of like two things I already like. And I think what I love about it in particular is translating the way he translates comic language into cinema language. I thought was masterful. And then to take that story, which is it is very funny, but really does have this disaffected main character, and to play that off properly with some action, with all the comedy. I really think it's the whole package. It's a great adaptation of the series. So that's going to be mine. I don't know if that's a popular one or an unpopular one.
I think that's a fair choice. With that, to me as well, it's the way they slimmed down so many books and such a big story into that movie, yet it still works.
Yeah.
And it still feels like the comic books as well. Mm. So
100%. And his just, his kind of whip crack editing style is just so suited to comics. And then all the little touches too that are really love letters to comics, of the hand-drawn sound effects that pop up all the time, and the types of transitions that are all practical. There's just so much stuff that he did that are, not just homages, but really you could tell he cared about the material. So, I'm a huge fan of that one.
That's a fair choice.
All right, good. Let's pass.
So what future projects have you got coming out? Anything in the pipeline coming out soon?
Well, on the animation side, on Man of Action, we have Mega Man. This Mega Man series is coming out actually very soon on platforms and Cartoon Network. It's really fun, kid show that we're very proud of. Mega Man as a character is sort of interesting and topical in that he doesn't just sort of beat down bad guys. He, because he replicates their powers, he kind of gets a little bit of insight as to why they're behaving the way they are. So this idea of sort of maybe trying to understand people, not just beating them up, we thought was thematically important to maybe teach kids. So that's in there. So I'm very proud of that. Ben 10 is up and running again and has been for the last, 2 years now, the sort of new version. And that's been fun. We've been executive producing that and really enjoying how that's coming out. It's certainly different from the initial show from 10 years ago, but it also reflects kind of our, the modern audience and what's happening on the network. And then as far as comics, Ken and I are working on a project that I wanted to do for a really long time. It won't be done for a really long time because it's a big graphic novel, kind of a road trip, father and son coming of age story in a way. But I'm very, very psyched about it, and Ken is as well. So that's coming down the pipe, but won't be for a while.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and then lots of other. There's some video games that we worked on as Man of Action coming out. We have, a lot of stuff. All good things. I mean, things I'm very proud and excited to be working on. It's been a good year for for projects.
Superb. Thank you very much, Joe. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for giving me time today. And we look forward to seeing you in October.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Up in sunny Kendal again.
Sunny. You can't sell it as sunny.
It was sunny last time, yeah. It was lovely. No, it was, I'm really can't wait to be back. And thank you so much for your time and for the support. I'm really looking forward to it. You know, I had a great time at Lakes the first and last time I was there. Yeah. It was actually right while we were shooting I Kill Giants. I kind of jumped over from Ireland, came to the con, and then went back to Ireland. And it was just wonderful. People are great. The city's great. I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you so much.
And we'll see you then.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Howdy, welcome to Breakdowns, the comic art section of the podcast. I'm Pete Taylor. I'm a small press comics creator and illustrator. Online I trade as This Man, This Pete. And the last thing I drew was a mutton-headed troll. Thanks to everyone who's given me feedback and comments about my artist profiles. Shout out to That Comic Smell podcast for tweeting nice things about my Kirby profile. Thanks, guys. With this episode, I'm changing things up. I want to talk about a comic artist's work and impact on others. What sets them apart and how they influence other artists. And I thought the best way to do this would be to get some contemporary comic artists on to chat about their favourite creators and also their current projects. So it's my great pleasure to welcome my first guest, Russel M Olsen, creator of Gateway City. Hey Russel, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we discover who your spotlight artist is, can you give us a bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm originally from the States. I'm from just about 40 minutes south of St. Louis in Missouri. But I moved over here about 10 years ago. My background is in fine art and in libraries. Worked in a lot of libraries and bookstores over the years. But I had a deep love of comics when I was a kid. I mean, I grew up kind of during that big 90s Marvel boom, where everybody was reading X-Men. That was really my kind of real start in the comics. I'd had a few here and there, but I'd never really been able to kind of shake off a love for them. So even though I was doing, kind of fine art painting and drawing, when I was doing my masters, I just felt compelled to try and bring comics back into it. So on one hand, the work was like really kind of very objectless kind of conceptual stuff, which was all right, but I just really enjoyed the process of, inking drawings and working with sequentials. So eventually I kind of abandoned all the fine art stuff and just put myself straight into comics. So I did some web comics for a while and then started up Gateway City and have been working with a lot of other people since then, but have kind of allowed Gateway City to be my masthead.
Magnum opus.
Yeah.
Cool. So, who is your spotlight artist that we're going to be talking about today?
I am delighted and honoured to get to talk about Steve Purcell. Steve Purcell is an American cartoonist and game designer and movie producer and maker and director. He's probably his most widely probably watched piece of work is he co-directed Pixar's Brave.
Right.
But he started out when I first became aware of him back in the early 90s with his work for LucasArts, the video game or computer game makers. Specifically, his work on the title Monkey Island.
Right. Okay. So it was games actually that brought you to your attention first.
my dad was for years and years and years was a lecturer on computer programming and computer science, and so we had PCs and laptops and things in the house from as far back as I can remember. So even though I grew up in a very rural area where most people didn't have computers, we often had 3 or 4 in the house. And so instead of, although we did have a Nintendo, I enjoyed puzzle solving games like Maniac Mansion and Zack McCracken and Monkey Island. Right. And Purcell did a lot of the game design or the backgrounds and the character designs for those. Because of the time period, they were all to play, to install one of these games on your computer. You would have either those big 5-inch discs or the 3-inch when they came around, and you have 30 of these things that you'd have to install. Yeah. And I think the game designers were pretty canny and realized that people, in order to keep their interest, to actually not only just buy the game but to play the game, to install it, it's going to take quite a bit of time and attention. So they used to fill the boxes full of little bits and things to read. So it wasn't just how to play the game, but you get all kinds of context. And LucasArts made these brilliant often there'd be little bits of ephemera and things in them, maybe a newspaper article that related somehow to the game. Sometimes you'd get, if you read all that stuff, you might get a kind of a sense of some hints and things on how to solve the puzzles within the game. But they always included in the back of them, at least for the LucasArts ones, a couple pages of comics featuring Sam and Max, the kind of the seminal work of Steve Purcell. And it was those comics that kind of got me into Steve Purcell's work, and largely been kind of aware of I don't want to call weird comics, but sort of non-mainstream, slightly humorous, like Ben Edlund's The Tick and Mike Allred's Madman.
The Mask.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely that kind of period, wasn't the kind of late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of quite anarchic Milk and Cheese, I suppose.
Yeah, I love Milk and Cheese. Yeah, I haven't read that in years.
Yeah. Which I suppose as well, over here we had, more kind of early 90s, mid-90s was Deadline magazine with Tank Girl, which had that same kind of flavour. I think Milk and Cheese was in Deadline for a small period as well. Okay, so because I knew Sam and Max when you mentioned Steve Purcell. I think that was one of my kind of only touch points, really. So it's really interesting that you chose somebody that, I wasn't aware of. And what I remember about Sam and Max was lovely cartooning, that great flow and bounce that it had, and the lettering I always remembered was superb as well on top.
You mentioned that because that is the very first time that I ever paid attention to any of the credits in a comic outside of artwork did. And he always made a point that, Lois Buhalis, who lettered all of his comics, was up there right front and center. I thought that was a wonderful thing, and it really made you realize how much of an effort it was. And her lettering style, one, was so sympathetic to his artwork. But also, I could see those letters now being used to write something else on a completely non-related or unrelated piece of artwork and know exactly who did the lettering.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's a good sign.
One of those things, yeah. But yeah, you mentioned the kind of the bouncy stuff. One of the things I love about his work was that it was kind of funny animal drawings, but they were in full dimension. Huge lover of early Warner Brothers cartoons. Chuck Jones, a huge influence on my work, even if it isn't always evident. That kind of his choice of distilling movement and flow. I was certainly I've studied that quite a bit, but there's something about the way that Steve Purcell designs things. It's almost as though they're made with with balloons, like balloon animals. It's like you said, there's that kind of bounciness to it. And although things are really well rendered and fully in a way 3D, even though it's 2D environment, there is a flattening to it. It's kind of like, I know that he and Mike Mignola were really good friends, or still are really good friends. Mm-hmm. And so there must have been some influence on each other. So there's that kind of way that Mignola designs 3D shapes into 2D forms.
Yeah.
that is kind of present in Steve Purcell's work, but then it's always counterpointed by the craziest of curves. And I just remember not being able to get enough of his work. And unfortunately, because he was a jack of all trades, there's somebody still living, I shouldn't talk about in past tense. Sorry, Steve, if you're listening. But the amount of actual comic work that he's done is fairly slim. I mean, you can go onto his comic profile pages that are out there, that list the bibliography. And he did a handful of issues here and there on Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. He did a great series called Hero for Marvel. I think it was maybe a 6-issue miniseries, but a lot of fun. He must have been working for LucasArts at the same time, because there are a lot of overlapping characters that you wind up then seeing in some of the games that are in there, which I think is really fun for a big fan. But yeah, for Sam and Max, for the kind of the thing that everybody knows, there aren't really very many comics. I mean, they released a couple of different collected editions. Telltale Games that got the rights to Sam and Max produced, I think back in 2007 or 2008, a deluxe hardcover version of it, and it's beautiful and it's gorgeous. But really, it just makes you want more.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I did look up his checklist. I think there was an issue of New Mutants that I remember. I must have read it. It didn't stand out. I mean, at that time, I think Jackson Geiss and was it Kyle Baker were doing a lot of the ink, so you wouldn't have necessarily noticed, I don't think, when I think back, that they were all quite uniform, I think, at the time. Mm. But they had those gorgeous Barry Windsor Smith covers, so that's why I definitely knew I was. There was an issue of, funny you mentioned, I didn't know he was big pals with Mike Mignola, because I did notice there was the Hellboy Christmas special from, I think, 97 that was listed. And I have torn my collection apart since you mentioned you were choosing him, because I know I had it and I cannot find it for the life of me. But he did a story in that, apparently. So it's interesting that I have obviously seen his work and read a lot of it, and it's going to be interesting for me to go back now and re-examine it. Do you think he's influenced you? Do you think you've taken anything from his work and incorporated it into your own?
Yes, yeah, I think so. Even if only as a direction for other things. Like, for example, now that I look back on his work, and I'm now much more aware of things that were going on in comics in the 40s and 50s, I can't help but see all of the references to Will Elder.
Yeah.
If you just like the opening page of Surfing the Highway, the collection of his works. For Sam and Max, is this sort of lovely New York street scene, and it's filled with all that kind of Will Elder chicken fat of just jokes upon jokes of every background character. There's something weird about them. Nothing is just kind of quickly penciled in. Everything is thought about and placed. So certainly there is a sense of space and of filling space with interesting information for the reader to see. I mean, there's that figure that keeps getting bandied about, which I don't know how accurate it is, but about like the average reader spends about 2 seconds per panel. So when you are filling those backgrounds with lots of lovely little detail, you are thinking, am I really, is this really worth it? But I think even if you only are looking at something for 2 seconds, you can tell the difference between something that is richly designed and something which is, the artist is phoning it in. They're just trying to get onto the next couple of pages when the action starts to occur. And so one thing I've learned from Purcell is to take time to, design give the background some personality and, allow it to have its own voice, really. Another thing that I find, really wonderful for him is, his background, of just background designs, but there's from the video games that he designed. If anyone who's listening has ever played Monkey Island, the original PC games, he designed most of the backgrounds for those. And there's so many sort of moving bits and pieces to them. And in many ways, I'd say he probably influenced me quite young in that when I originally went to university, I went in for set design. because I really enjoyed designing sets and setting up environments. And so, although I did, eventually leave from set design and go into, just drawing and painting, I'm one of the artists, and there are probably loads of us out here, but I enjoy drawing backgrounds. I enjoy setting the scenes, and so I think for me it was he opened my eyes as to what backgrounds could be, and what an environment, how an environment, just by really paying particular detail or particular attention to the details, can really set the tone and the stage of the piece that you're working on.
I'm sure, like everything, there's no hard and fast rule, is there? And some people might spend 2 seconds, but I think there's some of us out there that spend a lot more than 2 seconds on some panels. And I do remember he was one of those artists who you would always make sure you paid attention to the posters, wouldn't you, that you put on the wall, because there'd always be some kind of, funny wanted poster or something like that. I always remember that. And was it, I'm sure it was Sam and Max, where they have a trip to the Philippines, and he makes a joke about the fact that there's absolutely no reference used in any of the backgrounds and the sets, and it is just this mad mix of all sorts of just strange, worldly. I remember there's a guy in a suit and ties and on some kind of chariot or something. I always remember gloriously strange buildings with spikes and.
Yes, and then a guy in lederhosen selling weasel on a stick. Yeah.
Weasel on a stick. Yeah, which immediately gets slapped out of his hand or something, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, glorious. He is one. I don't know if it's a word that lots of comic creators necessarily use anymore, but he was a real cartoonist, wasn't he? Or still is. The work itself is, like you say, it's complete. He would write, draw, ink, and, I always sort of grew up thinking that was the definition of a cartoonist, somebody who's in control of the whole. And I think it gets too closely associated with animation now, whereas back in the day, Frank Miller would describe himself as a cartoonist because, he did the work. So yeah, I've really enjoyed rediscovering some of those things. I'm going to have to probably have a look into getting the Sam and Max hardcover myself. I did check it's available on Comixology, which is a godsend for picking up those kind of things nowadays.
It's those things are so rare. I think the cheapest you can get, even like the older reprints, it's going to be 40 or 50 quid, I think.
It's one of those books, isn't it, that usually gets listed on Amazon for like £99 or. But so would you? I mean, from what's available, it seems probably Sam and Max is the recommended work to point people to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's one of those things that it's bittersweet to do it because I can't say enough about Sam and Max. I think the humor is so fresh and it's so funny, and they managed to be pull on all of these film and TV tropes and sort of hard-boiled literary tropes, and at the same time poke fun at cartoons and animation, but it doesn't feel jaded. It feels the characters they're very aware of the fourth wall, and they're very aware of that they're just being manipulated by the cartoonist. But it's so funny, and there's no plot. I wouldn't want anyone to go for it thinking that that again, that Philippine story. Yeah, I can't remember what the premise of it is. I just remember that somehow Sam gets or Max gets tied up to a stake in front of a volcano. I'm not sure exactly what the crime is they're solving. But none of that is important. It's just sort of gleeful humor that is unbridled, and you're getting this sort of perfect little glimpse into the mind of an absolute genius. Mm-hmm. But the reason it's bittersweet is because you introduce this world to somebody, and then kind of say, but that's all there is. Like, you can read some of the work that he did for Marvel, and you can look at some of the work that he did for DC, or look at some of because he did a couple stories for Hellboy. I think he did a Weird Tale as well as a Christmas Tale.
Oh, okay.
And you can look at all that, and it's wonderful, but they're often very brief. They're on short-lived titles, and he kind of did some work at LucasArts and then moved on to Pixar, and now he seems to be just kind of that's what he's doing. He's working for Pixar and he's designing characters and directing movies. And so, you introduce him to this wonderful work and say, the artist is still living, and he keeps saying that one day he'll get back to Sam & Max, and he's been saying it for 20 years, and he hasn't. So it's introducing something to someone that is, sublime and wonderful, but it is so brief. You could spend about, 2 hours reading the entirety of Sam & Max, and that's it. You're done. You can watch the cartoons, you can play the video games, and they're great, but they're a poor substitute for just the wonderful, craftsmanship and design and sense of humor and effortlessness about how he works and draws. Which doesn't even get me started onto the paintings that he does. His paintings are absolutely phenomenal. I just see them and I just want to go paint.
Yeah, I did have a look at his blog. That's not been updated since about 2013. But yeah, there's some.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
Spud Vision, I think is.
Yes, that's right. But yeah, there is some gorgeous stuff in there. I mean, Pixar and some of the the creators that have found their way there. And I'm a huge fan of Scott Morse. They've found a great home where they are. I think somewhere that really does treasure that kind of adventurousness that they bring to their artwork. It's a good place
for me to be. The unfortunate bit is that, by stealing people like Scott Morse, you're never going to get another volcanic revolver.
True.
You're only going to get their work, you're going to get to see a bit of their work on something bigger. So, it's wonderful and it's sad at the same time.
Yeah, agreed. But you will be taking some of that artistic inspiration yourself and putting it into your own work. Let's talk about Gateway City.
Love to, yeah, sure.
Can you give the listener a brief outline?
Okay. So what I kind of have been opening with, talking with people recently, because there's the Kickstarter going on right now, so I've been speaking to a lot of people about it. It's in a nutshell, it's Dick Tracy but with aliens. That's not true though. It's very different. But in sort of terms of getting you into the sense of the time period, it's the Roaring '20s. It takes place in St. Louis. It's about a private investigator who is in the middle of trying to solve a double homicide, which is wrapped up in some smuggled hooch, and is witness to something that he that is kind of a coming together of gangs that are at war with each other, and from there it just kind of spirals out to realize that there's something far greater going on within the city than just gangs, sort of forming uneasy alliances. There are aliens, but it's I suppose my style is kind of, again, because so much of what I read and look at are either 1940s, 1950s artists, or they're people who are inspired by them, like Darwin Cook or Bruce Timm.
Mm-hmm. I did, to be honest, when I asked you who your artist was, knowing your artwork, I did expect. I was thinking maybe it might be somebody like Milton Caniff or somebody like that, because I think I could see an echo of that in the brushwork, in the figures. I mean, for me, Gateway City has such a lot of those elements that I adore in comics. The pulp sensibility. It does start off very Maltese folk, and lately has become much more, for me, Edgar Rice Burroughs. There's a real John Carter, Warlord of Mars kind of aspect to some of the later work, it seems to be, which it's glorious to have those combinations that you've spun together so well. It's a crazy good series, and so the Kickstarter itself, that's for the trade collection, is that right?
Yes, yeah. I had the fourth issue was printed back in May, I think. And so, I told myself that once I had finally had that fourth issue out, I would finally get around to doing a trade. So it collects the first 4 issues. Basically, the first story arc, it's an introduction as to what Gateway City is about. vision for it to come, there's an overarching plot which is taking place that all of the characters within the story are moving towards some kind of resolution. But at the same time, there are again, they're kind of a detective agency, so little things are occurring in between the big story. And so it basically, it's a vehicle for me to kind of explore all those things that I love, like, John Carter of Mars, and like the works of Dashiell Hammett, which, there's the kind of the if there's one piece of work that's really influenced me, and it may not be evident yet, but hopefully it will, is The Harvest, by Dashiell Hammett, and it's, I don't know if are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I've read a lot of Dashiell Hammett.
Yeah. I mean, everybody kind of says, "Oh yeah, Maltese Falcon," and I love the film of Maltese Falcon, and I think the book is pretty good too. But like Sam Spade is nothing compared to the Continental Op.
Yeah,
it's just the way that he's this kind of, I don't know, he's almost an anti-hero in a way, but he's like, his whole philosophy of the way he does things is by judo, and so I very much wanted to see. The main character of, if there is a main character of Gateway City, it is the detective, again, Lundy Lundquist. It's more of an ensemble piece, but he winds up getting more screen time, I think. I wanted very early on him to be pictured with a crowbar, just to kind of evoke that sense of using leverage to get where you want, as of always using your fist or using a gun. That kind of detective that pits people against each other to get a resolution. Mm-hmm. And that kind of gray area that exists within that. So Gateway City really is a vehicle for me to explore all those kind of pulpy, wonderful tropes of, so although it's set in the 20s, it's very much, kind of a product of the 50s, 60s, and the 40s to a certain extent.
And that's live on Kickstarter at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's we launched it on the 1st of August and it runs until the 31st of August. We've met the target. So at this point, it's all about getting to basically just getting as wide of an audience as possible, really.
Getting the word out there.
Yeah, getting the word out there. It's been a labor of love for the last year and a half, 2 years, putting it together. And webcomics are great, and it was fun to sort of start it out as a webcomic, but it looks better on paper, I think. And it's nice I've started doing the cons more, and getting it in people's hands. And it's lovely to be able to connect with people, and to share it with them. So I just want to sort of grow the audiences as best and biggest as I can.
Great. And what cons are you going to be at in the future?
Yeah, I am next month. I will be at Thought Bubble, and then I will be at the Meanwhile convention in Chichester, and then I believe my last con of the year is the Lakes.
How fortuitous.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Well, I myself am going to be at Thought Bubble in the Lakes, great. So be great to meet up. Thank you for being my inaugural guest and chatting so passionately about Steve Purcell. Great.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, not there's anything wrong with Steve Purcell. Had I known it was your inaugural one, I would have picked someone like Knief. I assumed that probably that would have been covered already.
Well, there you go. We'll get you back to do Knief.
Okay. I'd love to. Be honoured.
Awesome. Thanks, Russell.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
This episode, we're going to have a look at the exhibitions that are going on at the Lakes International Comic Art Festival 2018.
Wow, that couldn't have been any faster.
Quicker and quicker and quicker.
Which is just a no.
So, first of all, there's 2 exhibitions for Hunt Emerson, both of them at the Brewery Arts Centre. Mm-hmm. You got the Spotlight on Hunt Emerson, which is going to be in the Warehouse Gallery.
Right.
Looking at some of his work there. And we've also got, so I'm flicking through the computer here to get it all right.
Yeah, I'm sure they can't hear the clicking.
They can't.
They can't hear the clicking of the mouse.
Also, in the intro bar, more of his work.
Mm-hmm.
You can also meet Hunt Emerson in the intro bar on Saturday and Sunday between noon and 1 p.m. at the festival.
Lovely.
So go and have a nosy at that. The next one is Playing for a Draw, which is currently at the Manchester Football Museum.
That's right. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I saw the steam come out your ears then.
Just shut it. That's at the Sugar Store Gallery in the Brewery Arts Centre from the 21st of September to the 4th of November, which is being created by Steve McGarry, and all about football illustration through the decades.
Yes.
So 100 panels, image panels covering 10 different subject areas, including a funny old game, Wonders of the World.
What is that?
You'll play like a goal, and Heroes are hot shots.
Is that your southern accent again?
It's a London accent. You play football down there.
It's a London accent. They play football down there.
Even though there's plenty of teams. Anyway, I don't really know football.
I think that's obvious.
Yeah.
But don't worry. Okay. If you go to this exhibition, you will learn a lot.
Well, anything.
There you go. That was a good segue. Come on. I was like selling it there.
Anything about football that I can learn is lots compared to my knowledge. Heroines female representation in comics is in Kendall Museum between the 6th of October and 12th of November.
Ooh, we'll have to go and see that one. They shove it down in the basement.
Yeah, just round the corner from us.
I know.
And this has been going sort of. We heard about this months
ago.
Back.
This was going way back.
Being a comic hero has traditionally been the Dominion.
Well, you were right the first time. Yes, Dominion.
This is about to be challenged through a new exhibition called Heroines, featuring iconic comic heroes reinterpreted and reimagined in their female form. So some of the imagery is really cool. From what we've seen so far, I'm sure it all is.
Yeah.
Looking really interesting. So you can meet the creator between 4 and 5 on the Saturday and 1 p.m. on the Sunday.
At the museum?
1 p.m. at the museum.
Awesome.
Now, the museum, there is a small charge if you're in Kendal. Unless it's during the festival weekend, then it's actually free.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, it's £2 per adult.
Now.
And child. It's just £2, I think.
£2.
Yeah.
And the other one, which again is just down the road, The Art of Strensky, at the Wildman Gallery.
So is that the gallery?
11th of November to the 11th of October to the 15th of November. And this is, of course, Lorenzo Everington's 1940s opus.
We will be there.
Yeah. Showcasing what remains of the concept art, production of stills, and merchandising mock-ups that once accompanied the creation of a great but long since lost animated feature.
I must ask Lorenzo for a freebie.
You just want a freebie?
Yeah.
Lorenzo will be at the gallery Saturday and Sunday, 3 till 4.
So will I
then. But yeah, his artwork is
amazing.
It's pretty good. He's not a bad artist.
He's all right. He's all right, isn't he?
He does all right.
That's okay.
He's a bit of an arse.
You should do I don't know, we should do a Kickstarter or something, shouldn't he, really?
He might do all right. So looking forward to this as well, because his art, as I say, it does just stand out.
Yeah, it's something different.
Brilliant. So yeah, they're the exhibitions that's going on this year.
Yeah. We will see them all.
We will see them all. That's for sure. We can't really not when they're just around the corner.
No, we have no excuses.
No, we will be going to see them, and really looking forward to it, as usual.
Yes.
So, next episode.
Don't look at me like I know.
Well, you should.
I don't know. I just rack up here.
We've got a couple of episodes planned, actually. Look, I'm doing my hand at you.
Oh,
Chuck, we got a couple planned.
Have we now?
Oh, yes.
Go on, then. Spill the beans.
Next episode, we've got the guys behind the book Tumult.
I know.
Which we enjoyed last episode.
Really enjoyed that book.
So, they're coming on as we record tomorrow, actually.
I know, don't, because we haven't even spoke to Joe Kelly yet, but he's on this episode. How does that work?
You've ruined it again. And then we've got something completely different, the episode after that. The guys from B7 Media Productions, who've just produced the Dan Dare radio play, which is on Radio 4.
Yes.
Put on my Radio 4. Put on my Radio 4 voice in it.
And on Radio 4 Extra.
So we've got them to come on to talk about...
That's my Radio 4 voice.
Come and talk about Dan Dare, producing radio dramas and the other work they've done. So that'll be very
and try and get a gig, really. Try and get a job.
You want a job?
I want a job with them. Give us a job.
You want a job with them?
Why
are you going to London again?
All right, because that's like a job, innit?
What, being Landon?
No, that's how I sound normally.
My job
this
is
my
being
radio
Landon.
voice. That's not London.
Ain't nothing.
But you don't sound southern.
Because I'm not.
Stop trying to be something you're not.
I'm quite happy to be a northerner. I like my chips with gravy on.
Odd.
Chips with gravy.
No, that's all right. I suppose you got some roast chicken and chips with gravy.
What's the difference?
Well, that works more, but you don't just put gravy on chips.
Why? I apologise. She has no idea what she's talking about. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back on the 1st of September.
The 1st of
September.
The 1st of September.
I'm a bit thirsty.
Drink your tea, love.
Cheese.
Cheese? Did you say?
No. Thank you very much for listening. See you again soon.
Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.
This podcast is part of BritPod Scene, an independent network of uniquely British podcasts that's always growing. Check out BritPodScene.com or BritPod Scene on Twitter to find out more.